Hey, we're live.
Oh,
Hello, good friends. I just want to make sure I'm in the chat that we sometimes use.
yes,
Hello.
for sure.
Right.
Alrighty.
Amanda, we made it through another week. Yeah.
The weeks don't really I don't have weeks anymore.
This gives us a lot of structure, actually.
Actually, it's
this
true,
helps. Now it's like, okay, another Friday. We made another cycle. Sometimes the weeks kind of drift, you know?
Yeah, it's good to have that structure.
I find it very helpful. Put this keyboard over here.
That's so great.
Yeah, I hope our sound is okay. Yeah, I guess we'll find out. We got notions of that last time. So today we were talking about doing or bringing the focus to harmony when you're living outside of the mainstream paradigm, and that could mean a lot of things for different people.
I guess, what does disharmony look like for you?
Yeah. Well, I think it's when I know that for me, there was a lot more disharmony when I didn't realize that a lot of the difficulty that I was facing, that we were facing, was just because I was choosing to live values that contradicted mainstream norms. And that's just a natural result, that sometimes that's just a natural consequence of saying, no, I'm going to stick to my values, even though this social norm says live a different way. And as a result of that, there's going to be friction, and my values are more important. So I live with the friction because of what I value. That was an important realization for me, because it just brought some relief, where it was like, okay, some of this intensity, some of this like chaos, or some of these patterns are really just a natural result of that. And that's fine. That's a good thing. I don't know. What was your experience of that realization?
I don't know if I had like a specific realization of that.
Well, you've always lived in a counterculture way, right?
Yes, but I would hide it at times to be accepted.
Yeah.
So that was the difference. Like, I didn't stand in my integrity many times, and I still but that's definitely a goal, like, to be able to do that no matter what. And there are definitely times in my life where I've gone through cycles where I will leave part of myself in certain groups,
right,
to make sure that I harmonize with it.
Is that in like a groupthink way, or that's like personal sacrifice?
Yeah, like at the end of the day, I still have my truth in me, and I'm like, whoa, like, I know what's going on, but I might not be as open or truly myself, just so I can, not stir the group or cause any conflict or uncomfortable feelings. Even like, it doesn't, it didn't even have to be something monumental to me. It was just like even causing discomfort.
But what's the difference between that and genuinely protecting yourself in situations where it might be volatile too?
Yes, no, I'm not trying to say that what I did was wrong, because it was what I needed to do to protect myself in that moment. But now, with my awareness of all of the, the conditioning and the habits and the patterns, now I can look back on those times and be like, yes, this is what I was truly doing. And like, I had to do it in the moment.
For example, what?
Just different things around like spiritual beliefs.
Like at a family function or something like that, or like
definitely. Yeah, and just even in sometimes in veganism, sometimes in homeschooling.
Well, we're approaching the holidays,
so not vaccinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's why I bring it up, because I feel like as
we do live very right, so there's so many things.
It's a lot of things. We have chosen to live against many.
So I would say that I did buckle under the pressure of it many times.
Sure, we all have.
I can think back even to when I was like a younger child when I would do that, and then when I would buckle. Yeah. So, and then come back to being my full self for periods of time, and then,
yeah,
just want to be a part of.
You're getting comments on your shirt.
Huh.
Gorgeous shirt.
Thanks. Actually, nice. I was gonna wear a t-shirt, and this is what I got in the dark when the kids were asleep. So it's great. Thank you.
Well, the reason I bring up the holidays is because a lot of people might be facing this exact dilemma. They might be going to spend time with or connect with family members who don't share the same values, whose difference in values have been highlighted by the world circumstances, right? You have now, the vaccine divide, the mask divide. You have these big seminal issues splitting people apart. And so I think more people are facing this, where it's like, okay, am I going to stand in my values and my truth, or am I going to acquiesce to a certain extent? And it's interesting, like Judith is speaking to this right now, saying that, the other day she hasn't worn a mask in months.
Right.
And, she chose to put one on to support a friend in a different scenario where different values took precedence.
Yeah.
Where it was just different. And I totally respect that. I understand that, we have to be present with each situation. And when your value system becomes unmalleable, when it cannot adapt to your present circumstance, then you're just getting into dogma, really. Value systems have to be able to adapt. And yes, on the other side of it, we have to be able to maintain our integrity. It's a tricky balance.
Exactly. And so that's what I thought I was doing. And maybe I did start out on that path.
Yeah.
But a lot of other things came into play to keep me thinking that, I was just taking the high road and not really saying anything if something came up.
Right.
So I just kind of left myself all those times thinking, I was like, oh, this is just better not to say anything and keep the peace. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh yes, the family. They all have.
It's like
the family that thinks we're crazy. I know. I mean, everyone has this. But this was big even before the whole explosion of false narratives and conspiracy theories, like this huge thing that's going on in the world. I mean, this is kind of an old problem. I think being the black sheep, being outcast.
From family. I kind of feel better a little bit now because people that I know, we weren't talking about these kinds of things, and now we are. Like, I know people in my family were never conspiracy minded, and now they're like, oh, holy shit.
Yeah, someone's going
So, and some of my friends too, and so they're just sending me things, and I'm going, yeah, I know. I know. So,
but how do we deal with it when we are confronting family who is unable to be
are they being
cognitively flexible?
To
Yeah.
You?
Yeah. I mean, that's probably happening.
That might be, that's different. I don't know. Like, I guess it depends exactly on the circumstance and the people involved, but if you can get at least to talk to them, I think like try and relate on some level, just keep the relating going. Like, I know I've had things with my dad, and if people raise their voices, which just happens, naturally, but just again, like, I just keep trying to relate.
Be the one who's breathing more and speaking more quietly.
Yeah, exactly.
Like good basic stuff.
And it really works. It's not that, again, I'm not convincing of anything. It's just more like you come down and you can actually have a conversation. You can have a conversation and you can end it somewhat better.
Well, you do have to get away. You have to get away from wanting to be right, though.
You have to let that go.
You have to.
But you can also hold still your own reality. Like, when you let that go, because you're not trying to control them.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that now you've lost all your identity.
Well, you know what? Skepticism from family often helps us confront, things that we really haven't found solid grounding within. Maybe there's something an idea or a belief that we really have felt strongly, and perhaps they've pressed upon it, And we feel uneasy because we do have doubts that we haven't faced about something that we assumed was sure within us.
Yeah.
And sometimes they press upon it and you're like, wait, I don't actually feel that like really
time to go exploring.
Yeah.
And that's just trigger. That's a trigger.
Well, we were talking about this idea that we can't see people who are unaware of certain narratives unfolding in the world as less than, right? Like this is you can't put
even
people
though
beneath
I do
you.
That.
We do that. I mean,
sometimes
in the sense that you always have to be. This is really interesting. So I'm writing about this for Worlds Within right now, and it's this idea of teach learning and learn teaching. In the Law of One series, they talk about how you're always either teach learning or learn teaching. So sometimes the dynamic is more in terms of like you're the giver of like you're a teacher, let's say. So a teacher can be teach learning with a child. They're still learning, but they're teach learning. Right. Whereas for the child, they're learn teaching. Right. So this is the dynamic, the way they talk about it in the Law of One series. But so interesting because in going through Carol Black's essay, she talks about the Maori people, and they have the exact same idea.
Yes.
She's interviewing this Maori teacher who's saying that they talk about teach learning, and that this is really important. So, like, what if we apply that, to this family situation? Can we really flip it around? If we come into, let's say, a family event over the holidays with the assumption that we are the teach learner and not the learn teacher, I mean, maybe, yeah, sure. Okay. So you come in and you have knowledge of like the deep state and secret space programs and whatever, but it doesn't mean that there isn't a body of knowledge within like the family members who are, maybe resistant to those ideas or see those ideas as harmful or dangerous. They might still have a body of knowledge that suddenly helps you. So if you are shut down from the beginning, then it's like you said, you're not even relating. There isn't a relationship being worked upon. It's really just a power struggle. So you want to avoid power struggles, which means setting aside self-righteousness and this idea that like, no, I have to get this truth in that person. I need this truth in them.
You know what? I did that. I mean, I've done that so many times, but I'm just getting this memory right now of doing that at Thanksgiving. And I just was so powerful. Like there was something going on with like a pig slaughterhouse where a bunch of pigs got out and then they just started killing them. Like, it was just so devastating. And people were protesting saying, please just don't. Like there were sanctuaries to rescue and they didn't. And I was just so devastated. And I brought all of that to Thanksgiving because I was like, yes, there's meat being served. And I just was like, aren't you aware? You know? And I don't think that was the best tactic. I mean, I felt really passionate about it. But I think it like was isolating, it was, excluding the experiences of a lot of people.
Well, parents, so the generational gaps are really, really important to remember that certain generations literally don't have the psychological makeup to contain certain information. They don't have what's known as like the antecedent knowledge, which is like the precursory knowledge, which acts as a container for that new knowledge.
Which doesn't make them less than.
That's right. That's right. It's not a hierarchy.
Different.
That's right. Just different. Their generational experience created knowledge containers that, unless they are working on expanding their ability to hold new forms of knowledge, then there may be some serious limitations. And that's pretty natural for people who are aging, who have, spent a lifetime in a world that impresses itself upon you very intensely. This world impresses itself upon us. And by the time you're 70 and 80, there's a lot that's really like solidified within you. And so, that's really important to understand as well. And then the flip side of that is also that the knowledge containers they've created in their generational experience are really important for us to understand.
It's important for us to really hear their experience. At least that's what I'm getting right now. It's like if you truly just say like, yes, I get you. Like, listen to their story, whatever the story is. really look them in the eyes when they're talking.
Breathe slow, speak quiet, eye contact.
It sounds simple, but it's not easy, something like that. It's really, because I don't know, my shit always gets in the way. So
especially with family, right?
But when those like really moments happen, you see that each other. So yeah. And oral storytelling, we've been talking about that too, as like a way stories to, harmonize with people and their experiences, no matter what differences you have. And it's also a way of passing information without reading, which is quite powerful, I think.
It makes me think, Dahlia's talking about how, the response from family is really just to shut down and shut the person out when they speak about certain ideas, right? And like the rolling of the eyes and just like
I know
all that treatment.
Well, it's true. It can go flip.
Yeah, people
can think you're less than.
That's right. Right.
Like you're really mentally ill because you are thinking. Yeah,
it's hard.
Great.
It's hard. You can be
hard to be around that.
Yeah, it's one of the risks we take in maintaining our values against, the currents that surround us, whatever those currents may be. Yeah. This is a risk. And so that's a good place to start, because we can say, okay, well, I've chosen that path. That's a harder path in some ways. I've chosen to stay with those values and make those sacrifices. So there's the level of personal responsibility, that basis of, I'm creating this in that I've chosen to do that. And it's like you were saying earlier, that there's a temptation to not do that. There's a temptation, of course, to go with the mainstream and to be like, oh, there'd be so much social ease. Yeah. You would feel betrayal within yourself for not living your truth, but then you would exchange it for social ease, which is really, that's a very basic thing that's going on in the world with groupthink. Yeah. But I think the other idea of it comes back to what you were saying with stories, that maybe sometimes a more powerful way to share with family, to sort through the fact that you're living such a different life and you're living values that are so contradictory to what they're living or what the mainstream is saying we should be living. Maybe one of the more powerful ways to share is a story of personal awakening, of personal truth. Instead of, here's these facts I gathered, maybe the story of, I was having this day, this experience, I knew these things, and this information arrived, and it did this for my understanding of the world. It helped me be of service to humanity in these new ways that I didn't understand before, Sometimes when we're just fixated on getting certain facts to be acknowledged by people, and we put aside the story of how this information helped us grow, then we're not honoring ourselves in certain ways. But it's important to remember the power, like you said, of story. True. Of what if information is presented just from that authentic place of, this is what it's changed.
Well, that's better, because like what it sounds like, really what we're doing when we're just trying to force facts down people's throats is to control them.
Yeah.
Which is the very thing all of us don't want.
Yeah.
And it is important, obviously, we all know, like, we're all here looking up all the facts and like looking for the truth constantly. But insisting that someone take it in is controlling.
Well, don't have an agenda before. I would say that's a good way. Like, don't. It's like, because that was your experience with the vegan. Like,
it was a huge.
You were triggered from other events, and then you formulated an agenda, and you had it with you preemptively. I mean, if we can catch ourselves doing that and put that to rest before engaging family, it's going to be extremely powerful. Which means, I know. You have to drop the narrative of who they are, of who you are. That power struggle. This is hard work.
I don't know. I've definitely yelled and exploded, and it's not that nothing has been learned when I yelled or exploded, because for some messed up reason, people respond to violent speak and yell, and you can kind of shock them a bit. And I have had people somewhat listen by that method, which I absolutely hate. It's the worst. When people get me too fired up and I yell, but it does create like a response. And I have to say that I have had some positive feedback on that way of behaving, which is interesting.
What do you mean? What positive feedback?
People actually more understanding what I'm saying. Like they're finally taking what I'm saying
when you bring
seriously.
an intensity to it.
Yeah.
Well,
so because I try and avoid intensity like that for the most part.
It's kind of that idea that you have one bullet. Yeah. And if you're going to use that intensity, you only use it. You have that one bullet. You only use it when it's absolutely necessary, right? It's like you have that's it. You have that gun. You have that one bullet. Don't use your bullet. It's not necessary. It's not the right time. But it's interesting. Like Dale here's talking about like self-censorship, like, that feeling of I just have to censor myself. I have to censor all this information that I carry within me. That's a big part of who I am. And I just, and then you go to small talk with people. And how do you be authentic when you're trapped in little loops of small talk?
I don't know.
This is it's difficult, but it is important to remember that the Great Awakening, like we have to get clear on the difference between disclosure of specific narratives and bodies of information and like the actual spiritual momentum of the Great Awakening itself.
Yeah.
So this momentum is expressing itself through people's life paths in very unique ways, right? We each have this very complex life path where meaning is stretched out throughout the life path in totally crazy webs of synchronicities. And so the way meaning and enlightenment is going to arise in someone's life path is so unique that we have to trust that even if we're dealing with family members who can't absorb entire bodies of information, that you have to like literally avoid like libraries of information, then where is the awakening happening for them? Because there's no one it's not happening for. No one is having zero progress. Everyone is growing within. Everyone is coming into greater realization, even if it's snail-like in its pace compared to what we see our pace as, or the pace that is right or correct. But you can't, you just can't be on this planet right now and not be growing.
Good, so. Like I mean, maybe it's not meant for you to see, but it's nice to notice when people change, no matter how small the change is.
Do you know what's a good way to notice that?
Yeah.
Is to notice how much you've changed, which is also what we were talking about today. The idea of going back and being like, now, wait a minute. I've actually progressed greatly. And I thought it was a really good idea. Well, we should all do it more, but I thought it was a really good idea to go back to the beginning of the whole lockdown, the whole COVID narrative, and just see, what have I shifted since this all began?
Yes.
How have I transmuted this narrative? You were saying you were having vivid recall of early moments in the lockdown. And so what the meaning of those moments is now transformed in retrospect for you. Like, what did it reveal to you to have these flashbacks?
How much, like, just the different emotional climates of the time. So it was
like more fear in the beginning. You're saying like more collective fear.
Well, there was like more of like a fear bubble. I don't know how to explain how it feels, but like, yeah, it was just body feelings that came back like over the last week that brought me to like just before the pandemic, or a month or so before, at the beginning, and even the first few weeks, and just noticing how myself have grown and what I've done in this time.
You've done amazing amounts. You've transformed.
And then just other people like around me who generally themselves have said they're people that will never change. Like, that's not my words. Yeah. And I see them changing in huge ways. So it's been interesting to then see. I'm like, there's just, because I didn't try to go back and think about it. It just started coming to me.
These are natural moments of recall.
So yes, I'm like, maybe it's a cycle. There's
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting to see that, no matter what someone says, they're, I'm not going to change. I'm not going to do this, or whether you're noticing it or not, it's happening.
If they're alive on Earth, they're changing. That's it. If you're alive on Earth right now, you're changing yourself. You can't.
You have no choice.
Or you die. The only way to not be transformed right now on Earth is to die. So unless someone is already past that point, there's something is transforming within them. Mm-hmm. That's why they're here. You know, there are, you know, there's talk that this is a hard planet to get onto right now.
Oh, really?
That this is a chance for huge transformation. And that there was a desire, we're like, it's the Great Awakening of Earth. Oh my gosh, that's a really good one to get into. Yeah. It's like a sweet one to hook up to.
Oh
that's why, you know.
Awakening party.
Well, there's apparently an increase in sort of ET souls at this time, like tons of souls from elsewhere pouring in to affect the outcome, to be a part of the outcome, to benefit from it, to be of service to it, or to challenge it. Darker beings, and you know, I guess there's that too. Whatever. Everyone's trying to grow, even them. They're trying to do their thing.
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
Their thing sucks, but they're trying to do their thing. I know. Do I think the vaccine is designed? I shouldn't have said that word. Do I think that the thing is designed to stop our evolution, like the spiritual evolution? Okay, there is like some information I've seen about the alteration of genetics that could mute spiritual growth, like humanity's overall ascension process. I mean, I think it is relatively reasonable to a certain extent, considering that if you look at the way the deep state, this network of criminals, has been very aware of the awakening, you can see they've put things in place to try to slow it down. They have in other ways. We can see that the lessening our spiritual awareness and intelligence has been a major goal. That's like a stated goal of communism, to like shut down like religion and spirituality, all those things. So we know that there has been a concerted effort, and we know that they have great awareness of astrological cycles, and that factors into things. So it's not that ridiculous to say that, you know, perhaps this is also an attempt at doing that. I do know from my study of warfare that the irregular warfare that's around us, when something is like biological warfare, it's kind of also always psychological warfare and spiritual warfare. These things are all sort of entangled and purposefully messy, so that, you know, it kind of tentacles out. So that, for example, the attack on the family unit, this is something that's in a lot of communist material, and it's in a lot of like deep state material, like the Toronto Protocol and Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. And they talk about why they want to undermine the family unit, right? Because they want to sort of destroy its capacity to survive the control system. So this is really interesting because it's a good example of it, in that when you do something, for example, take away fathers. So you know that, you know, there's been an attack on, specifically, let's say the Black community has suffered this, that fathers, the destabilization of the family unit was very much attacked in terms of fatherhood. And that you right now have this, like, you know, a lot of fatherless families struggling. And we know there was a concerted effort to create this. But that's also biological warfare, right? You think of the biology of the child that's affected by this. Mm-hmm. The mother doesn't have the support, which leads to certain forms of hormonal balance. So that sort of attacking the psychology of the family, that has a biological fallout. The only reason I bring that up is because we have the same thing going on here. So even right now, there's awareness that there's a ton of people who don't want to take this injection. Of course, they know that.
Yeah. Millions of people.
So in addition,
and more this time.
Way more. I'm sure that's growing. That's growing.
Because
so
this has never been tested.
So you have to look at the way they surround these things. So you have the development of this injection, but then around it you have the sort of psyops to keep the people who don't want it triggered and sort of attacking the people that want it, and the people that want it attacking the people that don't. So there isn't only a concerted effort to try and force everyone to take it. There's also just like, keep the division, keep the people that don't want it upset and divided from the people that do want it. Keep those divisions strong. Yeah. So you have that layer of psychological warfare that's surrounding it, because they're not naive. They don't just think aggressive propaganda is going to convince everyone, right? There's knowledge of this. So I just think that's important to recognize that there's always that factor. And I think it's just a good call for self-awareness that when we find that there's some sort of pressure being put upon us, let's say in a psychological way, do that check-in of like the full being, your full being, how you affected spiritually, how you affected like in all the other ways. I found that, personally pretty helpful. There's the video that's been going around today of the nurse that fainted. I think this is a good example where it's like, okay, all the people who were already anti, well, that's just going to be evidence for them. But the people who are pro, like, I don't know, will that flip minds if that ends up coming out later on being like, oh, this wasn't a regular, and they can normalize it in the narrative? That might actually make all the people who are anti look more conspiratorial, less grounded in truth. So sometimes things like this, they can end up being more divisive than they can be convincing, in terms of changing minds. Like, what really changes people's minds? How does that occur on issues like this? I don't know. You have to sort of take it one thing. Depends if you're looking to change minds, let's say on the internet, on the collective level, or if you're in like a family conversation. These are very different things.
Yeah, that's true.
But
it's different on the internet.
It's very different. You have to know how you're representing yourself and who you're dealing with. But I don't know. I guess coming back to the original question, I think it's possible that there is an attempt to stop like evolution in certain ways. At the very, very least, if you're going to change our genetics right now with an injection, that will almost certainly have like a transgenerational effect. Like 5 generations from now, our DNA will likely still be recovering from being altered so deeply on a level that we've never tested. We've never done this.
Yeah, because we say that it happens just on other conditionings that are trauma-based or emotional or environmental.
Yeah.
So, of course.
Exactly. We know that like, the smallest things.
At the very least, this is a massive experiment.
That's right.
At the very least. But
if
knowing that people are constantly orchestrating things and, yeah. But at the very least, it's a massive experiment.
Do we think the conjunction of Jupiter, Saturn on the 21st of December is a part of the awakening? Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
I think it has to be.
It has to be. I mean, I would say all celestial events at this point, like they do serve their own integrated role. But I do find this conjunction particularly interesting because it so mirrors the... or at least from my perspective, it mirrors the showdown going down between white hats and black hats. You literally have the Saturnian influence, which is the deep state, like from a religious standpoint, that's their planet. That is, to them, that is Satan. That is Satan.
True, but a conjunction is emerging. Right?
Yes,
so
yes. It's
generally,
both,
it can be, it's a good thing.
But I mean, they have contradictory natures, right? You have this idea of the constriction and the expansion at the same time, right? This idea of like being imposed upon in a restrictive way and finding ways to expand within that. But this is what I mean, is that it mirrors that narrative because the response of, the criminals that are now being put under increasing pressure because they're having to come into the spotlight. They're having to make their presence more known. Their corruption is so much more overt. We can all see this. Like there's so much more obvious corruption, obvious lies. I think it's called white propaganda. I think that's what it's called, where it's just like not covered up. It's out in the open. There's a lot more of that because we're all having to be more transparent with who we are. But there's what I mean. You have this desperate group of criminals who have been the enforcers of restriction. And then you have people looking to transform and grow at this time. And you have those things occurring just in a very interesting way that I think mirrors that relationship in a way that can help us, I guess, move beyond the notion of having to overcome that force. to like overcome this criminal cabal, like to overtake them, and instead take all that they've built to try to restrict us and to completely transform, you know, as a species, to use that. I mean, it's also, it's interesting because it's kind of like the metaphysics of it are also interesting, because as beings who are moving through this ascension, a lot of it is a lot of the motion of that ascension is implosive. More of our awareness is going inwards. We're arriving more into our bodies. Our light as souls is like arriving more deeply in our bodies. So there's this like inward motion of the ascension going on. So it kind of like mirrors that, it's like constriction and expansion. All of that I find so interesting. I do think it's a big part, and that's just my sort of one of my narrow perspectives on it. But, I think there's some really big stuff going on, and we have a, you know, we've talked to astrologers on both sides of the political aisle, and so, you know, I've connected with astrologers who say that yes, what's coming, this is like big victory for like the Trump administration and for the light and for, you know, for all that, and then astrologers on the other side of it who are like, Trump's gonna die. this is going really to destroy him, and they believe that. But from their perspective of being spiritual beings, of being positively oriented spiritual beings, that it's like justice is coming for Trump.
Yeah.
So everyone, you know, they're facing the event horizon of that, but through their own lens, you know.
Yeah.
Let me catch up on these. I don't know. What's your feeling about it? Obviously, you don't relate to it like I do, because I'm coming through that. I'm bouncing off the conspiratorial lens into it, sort of, you know?
I don't know. I do a lot of it on like personal levels, I guess. And that's my way. That's my way to doing it for all of humanity, is to do it for myself. That's how I get most of the, you know, just that's what I'm drawn to doing the most. Or that's what it for.
That's that impulsive thing. That's that inward pressure. I don't
really have a choice, because it makes me, my body takes me there.
Well, Dale's asking, is it light versus dark with these two planets? And I wouldn't say so. It's like Amanda said, this is like a merging of them. But where there is the light versus dark notion is the perspective, right? So are we going to join in on that Luciferian perspective and be like, Saturn is Satan? Like, you know, do we want to join in that perspective fully? I know there is a lot of like good data on Saturn being used in that way, and us being coerced into the frequency of like unconscious Saturnian worship from their perspective. And we know that is definitely embedded in our culture. The unconscious worship of the Saturnian perspective, with Saturn as like a controller, and basically like offering our free will to Saturn constantly. There has been some coercion in that way. So the light versus dark in this case is, how do we transform that perspective? What is our true relationship with Saturn? This is a divine celestial body. So
integrate it.
Yeah, and how can you
integrate that wherever it is in your chart?
Well, and it's in the world right now. If it's this idea of restrictive pressure, well, you have masks, you have lockdowns, you have curfews. I mean, how much more do you want Saturn to show itself to you? You know, it's here, it's showing you, but it's showing you restrictions with the benefit of this conjunction, which is expand within that. That expansion doesn't require like an empty space, you know. In fact, the restriction ends up being what frees us when we use it properly, I would guess, when we adapt.
Yeah.
You know, and that could be very painful, it could be very upsetting and stressful, but still that might be the process of us using the restriction to expand.
You'll see it in hindsight.
Oh man, hindsight.
I was like, I love hindsight. It's so nice.
Hindsight is good. It is good.
Yeah, as far as I'm feeling it physically a lot. So my mood like can quickly become feeling restricted and depressive and like really low. And then I can be buoyant and joyous and positive, but my circumstances haven't changed.
What you mean with the whole
just in general,
the lockdown scenario, all of that, you mean?
I mean, just like in my life right now, day to day, my day-to-day life isn't a roller coaster. In
like
the way that my body and emotions are showing, like that kind of Jupiter Saturn back and forth, where I'm like, oh, creative ideas, expansion.
Very true.
So much positivity without real. The cat's puking and distracting me. But it can be just innate positivity out of nowhere, and even if it's a very difficult situation that is occurring, or not a difficult situation occurring and the mood is low and it's hard to feel.
I can totally relate to all of that.
So it's that, and so I'm riding that a lot. Oh, sorry. But I'm riding that a lot, and I'm using it as best I can to just feel the planetary things inside of me doing that.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult to, go to those lower points as well and then come back up again. But it feels like there's just a lot to learn in this.
It's so expansive. Being pulled in those directions.
And not being attached to it either way. Like not being attached to the low points lasting too long. Because I was doing that because it was like a few days, and I was like, oh, that's been a little too long now. Now we should go up now. It was like, okay.
Yeah.
One or two more days, I guess. And then so
it's been a bumpy road in that way. It's true. I had never pinpointed all that. I've definitely had like really deep lows and then huge burst of inspiration where I like write a book. Like that happened the other day. I like wrote the majority of a children's book in an hour, and then like 2 hours later I'm like,
I'm worthless.
It's so all over the map, but this is helpful in seeing all of that through that lens of restrict, expand, and really that dance, and that it's going to escalate, sort of moving towards that. I mean, I'm very excited by the way this is going to manifest in the world. I have no idea.
I know.
What is going to happen with this on a collective level? The Saturn-Jupiter conjunction is just like fascinating to me in that regard, because the collective is expressing itself in such overt ways now. Now that we're tied together through the whole C word that I won't say, now that it's brought us together, right? It has unified us. There's this, the invisible enemy, whatever you believe that to be, is there for everyone. So the collective karma just is so much clearer to me. Since this all started, I'm like, wow, I see the collective like responding in certain ways, and I just find it so fascinating. So I think it will be very interesting. And I want to I have information on an event. I'm doing an event on the 21st. I just want to get the info. I'll be doing a solstice event. Let me get the information.
It's a solstice.
That it's on a solstice as well.
Yeah,
also,
I don't know what that means, but
doubling down.
I mean, it sounds appropriate. Cool.
Okay, so I'm going to be doing a round table with a group of really lovely people. Matthew Mornian has connected me with this, and I'm going to be bringing some meditative offerings. I know I'm not quite clear yet what I'm going to be bringing together. But I'll be dropping the info on that in the next couple of days, but keep an eye out for some information on this roundtable that we'll be doing on the 21st. And I know for certain we'll be getting into some metaphysics and some disclosure, and I mean, we'll be feeling the day. We'll be in it. We'll be in the thick of it. hopefully doing okay.
Yes.
Yes, purge and release. My goodness, is it ever a purge and release? It really, really is. We're all doing this. We're all doing this. We are purging generations of social engineering.
Yeah. Generations. No wonder I put very intense oils in the diffuser today.
What's in the diffuser today?
Lemongrass, tea tree, thyme. And I was like, purging.
Oh, man. Dale, I totally feel Dale. Yes, that the restrictions are making you more short-tempered.
Yes.
And yes. It's a heavy, heavy weight. Oh, and yeah, you're in Australia. Oh man. I know. It is so real. And the mental, please take good care of your mental health.
It's very
take
stressful.
Good care of your mind. It's
I've been
a lot.
very feeling on a cellular level, like the damage that I'm experiencing from now at this point, not seeing people in my life, like and just crying and
getting calm sunlight
being
on
like,
my face.
I can't have people like close to me. That people like,
it's hard. But you know what, Dale? We were talking about this earlier today. That it's really important that we take the time to recognize that part of why we're feeling way down, part of why it's heavy, is because humanity is trying to hold the space through this darkness. We are all working to hold this light through the darkness. Do not give up. Do not give in. Do not sacrifice your hope. So part of the heaviness is because you're holding space. You're holding space.
It's true.
And that's so important. And thank you. Thank you.
Just take care. And, I don't know. I'm always such a, always look to the body, because for me, my body just speaks I know we all do, but it's such a main.
Yeah, it's a major portal for you.
Signpost. But if we're feeling agitated and all of that stuff, it's landing in the body. And so you can do, if you can't get there mentally, that's what I try to do. I try to go there physically.
Oh, so even if your mind is feeling heavy, you try to bring the body to a lighter state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not really a cure, but
no, there's mental damage from this.
Yeah.
Because this is an information war. It's a propaganda war. It's designed to be a war upon the mind. This is where we're at. World War III is an information war, and so the mind is what is taking the hits. These are the wounds. The fallen soldiers are the people who succumbed to the narrative. I mean, we are at a war, and your mind is your weapon. Your mind is, It's important to remember. We do have to take great care, because there is a purposeful attempt to break us from a mental perspective, from that vantage point. The idea is to kill morale, right? Collective morale is under attack. But I think about this, from the lens of the 17th letter of the alphabet. I see that operation as having been really mainly focused on building morale up until this point. And truly getting people's morale about the awakening, from the American vantage point, it was certainly based on patriotism and morale within that that sort of cultural context. But overall, it's just been about that. And I really feel because that operation seems to have had foresight about what's going to come, it was almost okay, leading up to that false narrative, to this whole attack on humanity's freedom, we need to preemptively build morale, because that's the light that's going to carry people through. And that's where we're at right now, and thank yourself, be kind to yourself, honor yourself for holding that light. And when you acknowledge how much you're doing that, then also you can figure out how to take breaks from it, to realize where you're holding things up, where maybe you can, soften, maybe not use tension instead of strength.
Yeah, it's tough. For sure.
Signs we've seen for light at the end of the tunnel.
I don't know if I have, to be honest.
To me,
Well, actually, that's not true. For example, today, I see a lot of elasticity to the human mind and the the souls contained. So I see people doing things possibly that they never would have done, and I don't know. I think the rebuilding of society is one dream in at least some systems. I don't know if that's.
I do see. I know. I see some of that reformation happening already.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
See some of it happen. I'm a part of some of those things.
Yeah.
Right now we're working with the construction of a new online community that's going to be designed to be secure and censorship free. I saw today some of the work from Dr. Zach Bush. He is running a whole network of food production that is designed to get organic plant-based food into food deserts and areas where people don't have, like, people are doing incredible things despite this, especially people who are living vibrationally sort of upon a mission that may seem unlikely during this time, but we're doing this as well. We're pivoting our whole careers. We're building a brand new business in the middle of a pandemic, but like, it's beautiful. It's exactly what I want to be doing. And whatever, I guess this is the catalyst I needed. Fine.
Yeah.
So, and I will say that the main place where I see light at the end of the tunnel is when I look back and think how much I have been transformed up until now. Okay. When I see how much I have changed, how much I have shed and healed and let go, you don't stop the momentum of that happening in 7 billion hearts. That doesn't just go dark. Seriously, people have been fighting to awaken. It does. There is spiritual momentum to the Great Awakening, and it is an undercurrent way stronger than political narratives, than elections, than any of that. Those are manifestations, but the root of this, you have that current within you because you see how much you changed. All of us can see it. All of us can look back and say, I am transformed now already, and there is no way of stopping that momentum. There isn't a way. There isn't any machinations that anyone can throw at the momentum of 7 billion hearts changing. And even a smaller amount of that, even a smaller portion of humanity doing that would be an incredible momentum. But there are so many people awakened now to what is occurring. And, being forced to stay home and forced to do so much online, look at the number of mass meditations and mass prayers that have arisen. That has spiked massively. So again, that there's waves of collective work being done that weren't occurring at all before, that this stepped up. So I see great hope. It's not without sacrifice. It's not without loss. It's not without darkness. Those things.
Nothing was before.
It wasn't before. This is the depth of the darkness is equivalent to the potential of our awakening.
Yes.
This is the swelling of the wave, right? That idea of the swelling underneath the wave before it crests. That there's that suction first before a wave builds to a crest. That first the water goes. So I don't know. You have that undercurrent to a certain extent right now. We have systems being pulled out from under our feet, norms being ripped away. I think that's part of what's going on. So I have great hope. That's not to say that feeling hopeless is a bad or wrong or inaccurate thing, because we got to process that too. And that's okay. But that's why we need community. And that's why that's why we're doing what we're doing. Our goal, we are building good resonance as a brand that supports wellness and free thinking. And, we want to offer people like products, of course, that support that and services that support that. But what we want is to build community. That's why we're doing this, because that's the container that's going to carry us through this. Community and family are the containers to travel
where
through
we can develop ways to harmonize with each other
and relate, deeply relate. One of the main goals of communism is to stop people from being able to relate to each other. It targets relationships on a fundamental level. So can we continue to grow our capacity to relate? Can we use things like family events where we are the black sheep, where we are living value systems that contradict our family's value systems?
Yeah.
Can you say F you to communism and still relate in a good way, in a truthful way, in an honest way? I don't know. I mean, these are the challenges before us, and we're going to fail at that stuff, and that's cool.
Yes.
But we're being called to mastery in the way of relating. And that's exciting.
Yeah. It means healing your shit.
It does. Well, may our shit be healed. May the shit of the world be healed.
Yeah, by the way, we have some essential oils in our drink, actually.
Yeah, what? Oh, yes, what concoction? We have some woke cocktails that we're enjoying with some essential oils. What did you put in this?
Lime and coriander, actually. Yeah, lime and coriander.
Coriander is what's standing out for me. It's very good.
It's so good. And it kind of goes along with some of the themes, I think.
Yeah, how do these oils relate to the themes of today?
Coriander is, the oil of integrity. So, if you're someone, in any way, like, I think if you're overgiving, if you're resentful, if you're, all of those things, I use it a lot for that. Just stand in your integrity. And I think lime is good for just clearing the heart. So, maybe you feel victimized. Maybe you feel, not that those aren't valid feelings, but maybe you're just, you could get some help clearing those things a little easier,
Some of the stuff does get stuck, just like food.
Yeah. Yes.
Just like food. Sometimes some food gets stuck and it takes a long time to digest and get it out, to absorb what it has and to release what it does not have that serves you. And I think that's the same thing, it's very similar.
It's true, actually. Now that I'm thinking about, these two oils go really good together for those things that we were talking about today, just the harmonizing and, if you felt betrayed, by your own family, stuff like that, or your friends or groups.
Yeah, betrayal, probably a big thing right now for a lot of people.
Yeah, or systems. But the betrayal and the victim thing can sometimes go together too.
Well, I mean, I will say that, we're looking for a place still, like, to build more of a community space. We have our Telegram chat, and we welcome people to come join that. But we are keeping an eye out for where we want to build an online community. Like I said, we have some things in the works, but we're not going back to the whole Facebook thing. So we've been wondering where to do that. So we're keeping an eye on things, and I mean, send us suggestions if people are enjoying virtual communities somewhere, groups and things like that. Let us know what you guys are doing.
For like information sharing and things.
Censorship free, really. Censorship free, but also where people feel comfortable, where they like the user interface, where all of those things are jiving. Everyone's kind of on the lookout for that now. Everyone's testing out the new platforms, so we're sort of taking our time with that. But Ricky coming in right before we end.
Oh, he just had to take a big old puke first.
Yeah, thanks for throwing up on the rug, Richard. Well, Amanda, I don't have anything else to offer today. Do you?
No.
Then
that was great.
Yeah, that was our longest one, I think. Thank you so much to those of you that came and chatted. Thank you for those in the chat here. Thank you in the good resonance chat. We really appreciate, Marianne. Thank you for chatting with us and suggesting. Oh, and she wanted to say, one of the signs that there is light at the end of the tunnel is that we're in the tunnel in the first place.
Great point.
Really like that.
Great point.
That's right. It's a sign of
we're
the end
in
game.
the tunnel.
We're in it. We're in the end game. Yeah, true. I'm rewatching Avengers
Where
Endgame
else
right now.
do you want to be?
Yeah, this is where we want to be. This is where we want to be.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Well, lots of love, everyone. And if people have specific topics and things they want us to hit, shoot us a message. We're always open.
True. Totally open.
All right. Lots of love, everyone. Good night. Bye.